Right. So the first question is, so I mean, we're talking about CSS selectors, right? So the first question is find all the DOM elements that have the class red bar. So let's see what people reply with. So dot red bar. So that's the correct answer, dot red bar. And another one was document dot get element by class name red bar. And then another one was dot red bar with braces, right? So just as a review, because I think some of you guys were confused as to what is a CSS selector. So let me see, Google HTML DOM. So, you know, when we're writing HTML, that's a text document, right? So it's just a series of characters and it's just a text document. Now, when the browser reads that text document, it converts that text document into a tree. So you can see here, if you see here, you see that at the top we have HTML, and we say that that's the root. So think of this as like an inverted tree, an upside down tree, right? So HTML is the top of the tree. And then a child of HTML is head and body. And why is that a child? That's because in the HTML document, head and body are inside the HTML tag, right? So if you're a child of something, that means that you're inside those tags. So for example, H1 is a child of body. And so H1 is inside the body tag. Selection is a child of body, and it's also inside the body tag. And then these H1 and selection are siblings of each other because their parent is both body, right? So the browser creates this tree, and this is called the DOM in web development terms. So DOM stands for Document Object Model, which basically just means that we converted our HTML into this tree. Now, the purpose of these CSS selectors is to find these little nodes on the tree. So for example, P is a node on the tree, right? So one thing that I can do is I can find all the P's on this tree, right? So the CSS selector just means give me all of the nodes on the tree that satisfy the following characteristics.
I have 2 questions. I don't think I need parentheses. I left them on the other ones I did. The ones where it's like multiple parameters, I guess you would call it, like something inside of something else. I put parentheses around them, but I feel like I don't need parentheses around them, that they probably could just be. Is that the case? They probably don't need parentheses.
They don't need parentheses, yeah. So yeah.
Then there was also when it was like an element inside another element. I was wondering what the difference was between, because I know you could do like say a P element inside of a div, we just do div P, but there's also an element that is a child of another element, and you have that greater than symbol between them. What's the difference? Is it looking for a direct parent, or does it look for any parent, even if it's like the object is nested way inside of it?
The less than is direct parent, and a space is just inside it. We'll go over that in a second if that doesn't make sense to everyone. So that's the purpose of CSS selectors. Any questions on that? Okay, so then, so for example, right here, well, let's see. So if the CSS selector for P is just P, right? So P is gonna look for all of the nodes on the tree that match that selector, right? So if you have P as the selector, it's going to find that node, that node, that node, and that node, right? If you have strong, it's going to find that node and that node and that node, right? So it's going to find 3 nodes if your selector is strong, right? Does that make sense? Okay. So now in your tags, your HTML tags, you can have as an attribute, you can have a class. Remember that you can have a class, right? So let me open up Cloud9. So you can have a class, and then you can also have an ID. So one thing that you can do is you can search all the nodes that have a particular class. So for example, I'm going to be creating a document here in a second.
Well, you can look at when we did when we were working at CSS and we did the styling sheets. We sometimes use class to determine the styling for a particular object, as well as ID.
Right. Yep.
On the styling sheet.
Yep.
Use the selector.
Mm-hmm. All right, it's taking a while, but all right. So let's continue going through this quiz. So the correct answer, the selector, is .redbar. The second one, document.getElement by class name, that's going to find the object in the tree that has the class redbar. Well, in this particular case, get elements. So it's going to find all the nodes in the tree that have the class redbar. But the question is asked, find all the DOM elements that have class redbar. So that is correct. In this particular case, though, I was looking for the selector, but this one is good. Then the next one says .redbar braces. The braces are this is if you were in CSS. This is the selector. I should have been more specific in this particular case and said, give me the selector to find this. All right. Any questions on the first one? Does that make sense, Rondell?
I just kind of, it was like a broad question, kind of, so I was trying to figure out exactly what was. I understand that it's kind of just narrowing down. It's under HTML.
Yeah. So the next one, find all the DOM elements that have the ID person. So the pound is the thing that says find all the elements with this ID. The dot is find all the elements with this class, right? So pound person is the selector to find all the elements, all the nodes that have ID equal to person. This one is similar, right? But that's the selector, and then the selector is there. And then this one is using jQuery, but you can see that the selector is pound person, and that class is not correct.
You said, isn't the pound like the what you would use for like a spam class?
You can use it for a span class, but you can use it for anything.
Okay.
So so let me see. Let me.
Who are using it in their account?
So if you have, your HTML document, and then let's say HTML. And then I could have a span that has an ID of person, and then the selector would be pound person, and that pound person would find that node in the tree.
Okay.
But I could remove ID from span and put it in body, and then pound person is going to find this node now.
So is it still kind of almost the same thing, or is one that makes it more specific?
ID is, the pound sign is for when you use an ID, and the dot is for when you have a class for that particular element. Like class form or whatever that we did before, we would use dot and then whatever the phone control.
Yeah, I've always, I don't know why I'm always confused with the pound and the dot, searching for CSS or selecting certain CSS for styling. That's why I was always confused. But
Is the difference between if you label the area you want to affect with an ID or if you put it in a certain class?
yeah, I've done that before. I changed everything and I was trying to change something specifically. So that's why I was trying to figure that out. But it makes sense to me.
Yeah, so in this particular case, the span has the class question. And so you're going to, that question is going to find that node, right? And then pound person is going to find that node, the body node.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, why is there an ID and why is there a class? Why not just one, right? So the answer is because in your HTML document, ID should be unique. So you shouldn't have another tag with ID equals person. You should only have one in your document, one ID person in your document. Class, you can have multiple. So you can have multiple, in this particular case, you can have multiple span with a class of question. And so, yeah, so dot question is going to find these two nodes. Pound person is going to find that node. Yeah, I mean, it's going to find the node and essentially it's going to give you a pointer. It's going to say, okay, here's the node. It's pointing to that node. With CSS, there's inheritance in CSS. So if you do styling on that node, then every child of that node is going to have the same styling. With jQuery, it's going to find that node, and then you can modify it however you want. Like you can delete all the children of it, for example, if you want it, or you can add a child to the list of children that it already has. So for CSS, you have the ability to style things. With jQuery, you have the ability to manipulate that tree. So add more nodes, delete nodes, change the styling of some nodes, that kind of thing.
Okay.
All right, so then the next question, find all the LI elements inside A elements with class list. All right, so the first one is A.list LI. Yeah, I don't think that's correct. Hold on a second. Find all the LI elements. Yep. So yeah, I think that's what you were talking about, Crystal, right, with the parentheses. So yeah, you don't need the parentheses. Document.getElements by tag name LI. So that's that's just finding the li elements. And then class list, yeah, that doesn't work. And then dot list li, that's as the selector, that doesn't work either. So let me show you how in a real HTML element, how this would look. So the question is, find all the li elements inside a elements with class list. So we have an a element with class list, and then we have an li element inside that. So we want to find li elements that are inside an a element that has a class list. So for example, just an a element, just an li element inside an a element, we're not looking for that. We shouldn't select that, right? Or just an li element. We don't want just li elements, right? So we want to be here. We're being very specific, right? So the how this works, right? So let's say that you want to find li elements inside a body element, a body tag. So in CSS, you would write it like this: body li. So body space li. That means, we'll first find all the body tags. So here's one body tag, right? And then the next one says there's a space, and then it says li. So the next thing is find all the li's that are inside the body. So for example, that one, and that one. So it finds 3 of them. Now, li is a direct child of body, but this li, the parent is a, and then the parent of a is body, right? So this CSS selector, body space li, finds that one, finds that li, even though this li is not a direct child of body. So you can think of this as find the body tag, then the space says, okay, now find all the ancestors that are ancestors of body, but that are li elements.
If you had another body tag, you can still find all those li elements.
Yep. So if you had have another body tag, then you're gonna find that one as well. Yep. Okay. Questions on that? Okay. So now the next thing is, let's say that you want to find a specific element type that has a specific class. So for example, I want to find all the A's that have a class list. So A just finds all the A's, right? So that's going to find that A and then that A, even though this A doesn't have the class list, right? Now, we just append the class with a dot. And so this CSS selector finds all the A tags with the class list because of the dot list. So now pay close attention that there's no dot, there's no space between those, the A and the dot list, right? So there's a difference between A dot list and A space dot list. So this matches A elements, which also have class list. This matches any element with class list that are descendants of A tags. Right? So for example, this would match A class equals list. So it would match that. And then this would match like inside the A, you could have an image with a class list. Right? So in this particular case, it would match the image tag. Right? Because the image tag has a class list, and that is a descendant of A. Does this make sense?
So you really want to be more specific.
Yeah, I mean, this gives you the flexibility to how specific that you want to be. Right? So then in the question, find all the li elements inside A elements with class list. Then first we want to find all the A elements that have a class list. And then we want to find the LIs that are inside there. So then A.list gives us all the A elements that are that have all the A elements that have class list. Then we want to find all the descendants of all of those that tag that are li. So that would be the answer: A.list space li.
I don't know why I thought I did.
Okay, so now there's a different CSS selector, and this is what Crystal was talking about. So let's say that we have a div with a class let's see, person, and then we have another div with a class address. And then inside here we have a span. Okay. So if we have dot person is going to select which node. This one, this is the first one, second one, or third one? First one, right? So that person is going to select that node. And then if I add space span, which node is the whole expression going to select? The first one, second one, or third one? Third one, right? So now what if I want, let's see. Now what if I have a span that is a direct descendant of that node? Yeah. So this right here, dot person span, is gonna select both of these spans, because both spans are descendants of that person. So the space doesn't care if you're a direct descendant of the node or you're a distant descendant of the node. So there's another selector. Instead of a space is a greater than symbol. And then this means the span has to be a direct descendant of span. Right? Questions? Okay. All right, so then let's go on to the next question. Find all the elements with a class button inside the element with ID company. So the first one is pound company and then dot button, space dot button. So that one's correct, minus the parentheses. You don't need the parentheses. And then this next one, dot button pound company, that's almost correct, except that it's just flipped. So this is just going to find all the elements with the class dot button, and then it's going to find inside or the descendants of that button that have ID company, right? But we want all the elements with class button that are inside of company. Any questions on that one? All right, then the next one is find all the A elements with the class BTN inside the elements with class item. So the first one, dot item BTN. So we need so we need the correct answer is dot item space A dot BTN, right? And then BTN dot BTN dot item. Can anyone write some HTML that would match that expression? So let me move it over here. So what would be some HTML that matches that? .btn space .item.
You would have like a div with class btn, and then inside of the div would be another div with class item.
Yeah, so that's what would match it. What we actually want is, let's see, I forgot what we were going for. So all A elements. Okay, so dot item space A dot BTN. So this would be a div with a class item. And then it has to be an A tag now with a class BTN. So that matches that. Any questions? Yep.
I had a question about some things that weren't on the quiz. Clarification. Because there were some things that I thought, okay, these are doing the same thing, but like I asked with the parenting things, I got the feeling that that's a different thing, that if you wanted a direct parent, you convert. And then there's the element plus element, which selects all the elements that are placed immediately after the first element. And then there's one that selects every element that is preceded by element, which sounds like the same, but I think what it is it's probably the plus is looking for elements that are right next to each other, like the div on top of a P, and then the one with the squiggly line that I don't know if you know is looking for maybe an element that doesn't have to be directly right after it. Maybe it could be a little ways down, just avoid that the other one is first.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
So so you're talking about that item plus let's say BTN, right?
Yeah, versus the one with the squiggle.
So that one would be item and then BPN. Yeah, so that one, like if we had something like that, then that wouldn't select this one, right?
Yeah, but if you changed it to the squiggle, it would.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. Okay. I have that. And then the other one is what was the substrate. And is that just finding something with it says, okay, if you do using the attributes, because you can search for attributes inside the bracket. So you have an H element, an A element, and then inside the brackets you have ref.
You're talking about like a
Star equals, and then you have just a piece of what the URL is. Is that different from doing
like that, right? Versus that.
There's one with a squiggle, but a squiggle in front of the equal sign. But I think that's just for attributes in general. Because squiggle and then it's versus the star. Is there like a?
I don't remember those two. I would have to search for them. But,
I just have it's on the list. So, but the thing is, they are different things because I thought maybe it was an issue with it. It's with the star. It says it's looking for the href that contains the substring. With the other squiggle, it doesn't have to be a string, and I was wondering if the star was specifically for strings or if it was just doing pretty much the same
I think
thing.
this. My guess is that this one's for regular expressions. So let me check CSS.
But I think this squiggle will work for any attribute that just contains that part of that value or that value in it. It doesn't have to be specifically that. It just can be have that within it.
Let's see.
So what's the star? The star is the contained, right?
Yep.
So
Contains.
what's the difference with this?
Which one you're talking about? This one, like this symbol.
You know, the squiggle.
The one above the near. The one near the one on the keyboard.
Yes.
Okay.
I do not know the name of that key. They may not even have it. So maybe I should just stick to using this stuff.
Yeah, that one's not used. Like I've never used that one programming.
Okay, so you haven't used the squiggle equals for the attribute?
No.
So I'll just use the sign.
Yeah.
I'll do that.
The only one I've
But
used.
it did the same thing. So I was like,
Yeah, the only one I've used is the equals, ever.
well, equals, isn't that looking for something that is exactly that?
Yeah,
But
that's
what if you wanted to look for something that just contains, if you want to look for something that contains this, but doesn't have to be exactly this, that's when you would use the star.
you could use it. I've never used it, and I've seen it used in other code, but I've personally never used it. So those things, those I think those selectors are like you can probably do other things to your HTML, like format your HTML in other ways, so that you don't have to do those things.
Yeah, I think a lot of them, because it's a long list, but I felt like a lot of them were just like, if you realize like you got yourself into a corner, you painted yourself into a corner, and you're like, oh, now I need to find this, so I need to get like super specific or super kind of like weird to get around to the item I'm actually trying to get to. But I could see it being more useful. But some of the ones, like especially with the determining which child and like the number of child, it just seemed like that was something that you would do if you forgot to actually ID your elements, or you realized you needed to ID something or locate something that was within something else. Because it seems like a lot of extra work rather than doing some of the just dodge, such
Right, yeah.
pounds, such and such.
Yeah.
It would be a lot of extra effort. So I do understand that a lot of these you wouldn't necessarily use.
Right. All right. So that was good. I think maybe the quiz wasn't clear in some places, and so I think we're still a little bit. How do you guys feel? I think we're still a little bit iffy on so maybe not everyone, but some of you guys. Do you guys feel comfortable on CSS selectors? So I think my feeling is that I can send you. I'm going to send you this link. The 30 CSS selectors you must memorize. I mean, there's way more selectors, but I think these are the ones that you're going to use the most. And so I'm going to send you this link so you can study it, and then we're going to have another quiz. This quiz, I think I'm just going to send. Yeah, we'll have another CSS quiz on Tuesday. So review these CSS selectors, and yeah, you have to memorize them, and you're going to use these CSS selectors all the time, so it's better that you just memorize them. These are the 30 CSS selectors that you're going to be using most of the time. So yeah, any questions? Yeah, so what does that mean?
You can use that, and above it they use the star.
Oh, okay. So this just means that like so.
Economic space between.
Yeah. So it's this right here. A data dash info. I think it's. I don't remember what that is. Does anybody remember what the name of that symbol is? Yeah, I just call it the. There's a name for it. A tilde.
That's what it says in the explanation.
Is that it? Oh yeah, I think it is a tilde. Yeah, the tilde. All right. So yeah, it just means that we're gonna match image right there, right? So for example, if we had a data dash info star equals image, and then instead of external space image, we had external space image 1, then it would match that. But we might not necessarily want it to match image 1. We want to match it exactly just image, right? Does that make sense? This would probably be better with classes, because with classes you can have, if you want to add multiple classes to an element, you just put a space between them. And then you want to match, basically you would be saying, give me all the elements that have this specific class. But then, if you were just doing that for classes, then you would just probably just do a dot.
Yeah. So it's just taking into account the space.
Yeah. I'm not really going to test you on, this one, because not a lot of people use that one.
See, that's what I'm so curious. Like, it seems like it's the same thing, because it's just finding a piece of, the value as opposed to the whole value. You can just look for a piece, but I guess the difference is that it can include the space of the boundary.
Okay. Yep.
All right.
Cool. All right. Any questions? All right. So that makes a little more sense, Rondell.
Yeah, it made more sense of what I was going into. I think overthinking it, maybe. But I know in the past I kind of learned from CSS, but not really specifying what I needed to style, and it messed up everything instead of something specifically inside of a tag. So it makes it.
Yeah. Oh, I see what you mean. Like you needed to be more specific, right? Otherwise, it would style a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, like I was trying to, I guess, style like colors and stuff, and I wanted certain parts of it one color, and I did it and turned everything the same color. So now I understand what I did wrong.
Something I did when I was doing my website was with the headers. I wanted them all to be like the same size, but I wanted them to have different fonts and be different colors. So I did, just for H1, I did the size that I wanted it to be, and then I used IDs for the different headers from the different pages. I just named them generically. I'm probably going to do something more specific, but it's just like style 1, style 2, style 3, and then I just, for each of those styles, I gave them a specific style, like what font I wanted, and what color. I decided to use 3 different fonts.
Okay.
But I wanted them to be the same size, so it wasn't as jarring when you switch from page to page, because they were in the same location on each page too. So the only thing I wanted to change was the font color.
Yeah, I think this right here will help out with all of that stuff. I did the same thing too with now I'm thinking about containers. And I think I named like 2 or 3 containers the same name. And it messed up everything with my CSS until I looked at it and realized you have to give them different names even though they're containers. You have to kind of specify.
Yeah.
Like different container elements on the page, kind of get everything the same way instead of just do something.
Yeah, ID and class are, you have to learn how to use one versus the other. Right?
I see how easy it is to mess up everything as opposed to just one, just like a period or how you use space and something like this.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. So now we'll get to our some of the class. I guess before we move on, we're getting close to the end of the class. I think we have about a month left in the class, and what we want to do, with the remaining of our time, is we also want you to create a mini project, like a little app using Rails, using JavaScript, using everything that you've learned, HTML. Like this is your moment to demonstrate what you've learned, and to also, if you have any questions on something, if you get stuck on something, you also can ask questions. So I think the class, we're still going to have like new concepts introduced, but I want to set aside some time of the class to just go over questions that people might have on their apps, or things that they might get stuck on in their apps. And as a class, we can try to understand, those issues and figuring them out. And then, okay, so that's one thing. So now what would be the app, that you want to create? So the first thing is that I'm going to come up for next class, I'm going to come up with a list of apps that I would suggest doing. And then these are apps that I think that you should be capable of doing, that they're not too complicated, and that you should be able to finish them in the time that we have, right? And then the other possibility that you have is if there's something that you want to do that's not in that list, then you feel free to go ahead and try to do that, with the caveat that it might be more complicated, right? So you can manage your time and say like, oh, I'm not going to have a lot of time in the next few weeks, so I'm just going to pick something from the list. Or you could be like, I want to challenge myself, so I'm going to pick my own thing and then work on that. It's perfectly up to you. Like if you pick one from the list, that doesn't mean that you're going to be at a disadvantage or anything like that. There's still, there's some challenge to it. And then at the end, we're going to have like a little demo Typically, Dan comes here to class, and I think sometimes we invite some other people to see the apps. Is not stressful, so don't feel like it's stressful. But you're going to be guiding us through your app, like showing us the features that you've added to your app, things in which you wanted to improve the app but didn't get to, and then maybe some suggestions from everyone else. Yep.
I plan to make like visual novels where you can kind of choose your path and tell your own story with it. I mean, I'm restricting how many ways you can go, but there will be some interesting elements, and then eventually I want to do like a place where it's kind of like an online forum where people can go and chat and they can do their own stories and things like that. But to start out with, I wouldn't mind just doing kind of like what we did with the mud, but in a kind of in a more elevated state, and also have the option of people purchasing stories or purchasing access to stories. I don't know if that is going to be like a possible thing to program. So I'm not sure exactly how much I would be able to do, but I'd like to be able to add reviews, at least do that, like add reviews where people can say, oh, I enjoyed this, or this is really good, or I had an issue with this, and you fix this, or whatever. But I guess maybe just expanding on what.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, I mean, like, and one thing that I would suggest to everyone is that first implement like a very basic feature, and like it's good to have like all these ideas, right? But first implement a very basic feature, and then focus on that, and then start adding to it, because it's very easy to get overwhelmed. You start coming up with a whole bunch of ideas, and then maybe you don't know where to start, or also you may start coding the ideas that are not going to be shown to other people, right? So be careful with that. So by Tuesday, I'm gonna give you a list of things that, like the list of possible apps that you can do, or you can pick your own. And then by next Saturday, a week from now, you're gonna pick which app you're gonna be working on. It's also perfectly acceptable if more than one of you pick the same app. And maybe you go in slightly different ways, implement it in a slightly different way. So that's also another possibility. So, but by next Saturday, so a week from now, you're going to select the app that you're going to be working on, and then you're going to be working on this at home. And then every day that we meet, we're also going to be going around and updating the status of our app. With the projects that we have right now, we have something called a stand-up, which is basically you say what you worked on the previous week, and then what are you stuck on, and then what you're going to be working on next week. And so we're going to be doing a version of that. It's just going to be like very quick, like a minute, like I worked on this. Next week I'm going to work on this, and I'm not stuck on anything, or I'm stuck on this. And then, after that, we're going to try to go over things that people are stuck on. And then after that, we're going to go on cover a new topic in class. So, questions?
I was just thinking, I think it's forgetting the whole purchase purchase item. I'm just gonna leave that. But yeah, because anyway, I think I want to do like in the future do a Patreon where people can support the writing. But thinking it's probably more like a combination of our library app where you can look up the stories that are on the site and then with a little description about them, and then you can click to get more info, which is something I think we didn't get to on our library app. But when you click it to bring you to the month thing where you're going through the story. And
Right.
then at the end, you have the option of kind of like the recipe app where instead of inputting a recipe, you're adding a review at the end. Or like a survey, I guess, maybe like a survey kind of thing. Would it be more like a recipe? Probably more like the survey.
Probably more like the survey because you want multiple reviews, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll probably do more like a survey app where they can add a review for it. And instead of difficulty, it'll be rating.
Right, yeah.
Okay. So do you think that would be
That would be acceptable, yeah.
cool? I like that.
All right, any other questions? Okay, so now today we're gonna be, we may not have much time, but we're gonna see what we can cover. We're gonna be looking at another API. So the API that we worked with last time was the To-Do API that we ourselves created. But now, if you go to the website openweathermap.org, this is an API that for weather that we can use. So if you click on API, then you can see the different information that they offer. So the one that that I'm going to look at, or that we're going to be looking at, is current weather data and the 5-day and 3-hour forecast. So if you look at the API doc for current weather data, you see that here's, for example, a URL, api.openweathermap.org/data/2.5 weather $Q equals and then city name. So we can query the weather for that city. So in here they have some examples. So if I click on this one, you can see that it gives me JSON, right? Just like before we had JSON. So this is me JSON. And it gives me the current weather for that city, which is London, UK. So it tells me right here, the coordinates. That's the position of the latitude and longitude of London. And it gives me the weather as an array. So drizzle, looks like there's some drizzle. Description, light intensity drizzle. Icon 09D, we'll look at that. And then, gives me some other information. Now the icon 09D, that's these little icons. So 09d.png, that would be the icon, right? So what we want to create is we want to create an app, a jQuery app that uses this API to create like a weather app. So basically, we're going to be typing in a city, and then it's going to show the weather for that city, and it's also going to show the forecast for that city. So if we look at 5-day forecast API doc, and then we look at that example, open weather map, data source forecast, London. So this is XML. So I'm going to delete this because we're just going to be doing JSON. So this is all the information for the 5-day weather forecast, right? So for example, rain, clear, and we don't know how the data looks like yet. That's a lot of data, but our goal is to get the data from this API and then display it in a nice way to the user, right? So questions? Right. So for Open Weather Map, they require you to sign up to have access to the API. So we're just gonna, I'm gonna sign up. Let's see, sign up. I don't remember if I sign up already or not. So here, CTB instructor, and then Ramiro. You have to click that you agree to the terms of services. Okay, so I already have, I think I already signed up. So let me see. Okay, so once you create your username and you sign up, then the next thing that you want to do is you want to go here to API keys, and then you're going to be able to see the keys. So what's an API key? An API key is often used in an API, and in the particular case of Open Weather, what you want to Open Weather, they're providing this service for free. So they don't want people to just continuously use their service. So you can only use their service if you have an API key, which is basically saying, I'm this person. So you're going to have a different API key. I'm going to have a different API key. And Open Weather Map is going to track who is using the service with this API key. So when you make a request and you send your API key, Open Weather Map searches whose API key that is, and then it sees, okay, it's that person. And then that person maybe only has access to the service for maybe 100 times a day. And then if you request weather information more than 100 times, then they say, no, you can't do it anymore, right? So that's one use of an API key. For our To-Do app, we didn't have an API key, so anybody could have just used our API as much as they wanted, right? Another reason for having an API key is that you can, it's kind of like a login, right? So in our To-Do app, anybody could add another to-do item, or they could delete an item, or they could do whatever they wanted. So it was basically unprotected. So with an API key, maybe you grant access to a person to only do, only add things. Maybe another person with a different API key only deletes things. So API keys are kind of like the equivalent of a login. You're authenticated to use this information with an API key, right?
Is it similar to what we did when we first were connecting our workspace to GitHub? We had used, I think, a key.
Yeah, it's very similar. Cool. All right. So then, in my app, I'm going to have to use that API key.
I just have the default one.
Yeah, you can use either one for our purposes. This service, they have plans where you can pay so that you can use their API more. And that's if you wanted to have if you wanted to create an app that was very popular and that you were making money using that app, then you can just pay Open Weather Map some monthly fee, and then you would be able to use their API as if it was your own, right? For our purposes, we're not really going to do that. We're just using it to learn more about APIs. So that's it. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another directory called weather, and that's where my app is going to live. And then I'm going to create an index.html file inside weather. And it's just, you know, your typical HTML with a head and a body tag. And then I'm going to add jQuery and also Bootstrap, right? So let me first do jQuery, jQuery CDN. So that's the code. And for our purposes, remember that we have to change this from HTTP to HTTPS for secure. Right now, I'm also going to add Bootstrap. So Bootstrap CDN. And then I'm going to add the CSS, or I'm sorry, the CSS and the JavaScript. That's the CSS, and then the JavaScript. And remember that the JavaScript I have to put after the jQuery one because the Bootstrap JavaScript requires jQuery. Okay. All right, so for our app, for our weather app, what I want to do is that the user types in their city and then they press go, and then they see today's weather forecast and then the weather forecast for the next few days. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to style that. Let's see. So for
We're doing Bootstrap CDN, right?
mm-hmm. bootstrapcdn.com, right? Right now, I'm just going to put a div with a class container. And in there, I'm going to put h1, hello. And then I have to start Apache service, Apache 2 start. And then I'm going to go to website. Actually, not website, weather. All right, and so that's what we have, right?
One more question.
Sure.
The JavaScript has to go above the. Right?
So first, you have to put the jQuery JavaScript in head.
Like the first step at the top, that's just the CSS, right?
Yep, the CSS.
And then below it is the jQuery, and then under that is the JavaScript.
The Bootstrap JavaScript.
Okay. So that makes sure that we're.
Okay. So let's do weather. And then I'm going to do an input element with a class form control. And then the name is city and placeholder city. So if I refresh, I see that we just have city, right? So now I'm going to add a button, Bootstrap. Let's see, get Bootstrap. And I want that that button next to the input element like this. So that's a button, that's an input group. So go back here and then div class equals input dash group. And then span class equals, let's see, input group button. And then button class equals btn and then btn default. Here we have so we have our city, and then we have a button that we can click, and then it should give us our weather information. Now after that, what I want is I want to display the weather. So I'm going to have a div with ID of current. And this is where I'm going to display the current weather conditions. And then another div with ID forecast. And this is where I'm going to show the weather forecast. Okay. So let me see what information the current weather gives me, so that I know what to display. So the JSON gives me the weather. It main looks like is what's a very brief description, and then light drizzle intensity is a little bit more. Base, stations, main. So it gives me the temperature and the pressure. And it looks like the temperature is 280.32. That looks like it's probably in Kelvin, not Fahrenheit or Celsius. So let me change this to Raleigh. Okay, so 280. The pressure gives me the humidity, the temperature min, temperature max, visibility. So what we're going to display is we're going to display the brief description of the weather, the temperature, the humidity, and then we're going to display that little icon. Okay, so there's probably a way to make it so that it returns the information in Fahrenheit, maybe. So let's see. Here's an example. Unit default is Kelvin. Okay, so units. So let's do in the URL after the API question and units equals imperial. Okay, so we have an error. Let's see, maybe after the Raleigh. Let me click on this one. Question units. Main temperature is 7. Oh, that's because country is Great Britain. So this is probably Raleigh in Great Britain. I think you can also search by a zip code. So let's see. 27605. I think that's this zip code. Still Great Britain.
Maybe it only does England or Britain. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, comma, I think. Yeah, comma US. All right. So it says just Great Britain. All right, let me click on, oh, it's because it's zip. So, all right, 27605. All right, so rain, light rain, the temperature 277.
Why does it say 200?
That's in Kelvin.
Oh, so it's still not.
Yeah.
Switch it to. I was like, it is 275 degrees. Are we the sun?
And then looks like countries US, name, Mountain View. That doesn't look right. Because if I plug in these latitude and longitude coordinates into Google Maps, I think that's going to show up in, not here, but in California. So let's see what happens.
It's spelled correctly.
I think I have to not put the negative, maybe. Uh, hmm. Anyways, we'll just assume that it's correct for now, because we'll still get weather data, and then we'll figure out more precisely what how it should work, right? But I think that I'm going to use, instead of using the city, I'm going to use the zip code. And then right here, units equals imperial. Okay. So first, let's do the HTML. So this is the current. So I want to display the temperature. So this is going to be let's see, a div with a class equals temp, and then let's do 80 right now. And then we also want to display the weather description. So class equals weather. So let's see, light rain, for example. And then we also want to display, what else do we want to display? The humidity. So div class equals humidity. Humidity 85% maybe. And then also the wind. So wind west at 10 miles per hour, let's see. And we also want to show that little one of those little icons. So, okay, here are the icons. So this is an example of one icon. So IMG SRC equals, and then that's the icon that we would have. If I refresh this, you can see that we have our information there. Right? And okay, so then forecast, what we want to show is we want to show the temperature, the weather. We don't want to show the humidity, and then we just want to show the little image. I'm going to move the image to here, just the temperature, weather, and then that's it. And then I want to put all that inside a div, because I'm going to have multiple of these divs with a class of forecast. See, okay, and so I can have multiple of these forecasts. Then I'm also going to have the day. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to have the day as well. Div class equals day. For example, for this one, right now it's Saturday, so this one would be Sunday. Monday. Tuesday. Wednesday. And then Thursday. So if I refresh, then I have all of my forecasts, right? So any questions? Right now we're just trying to get all the information there, and then now we're going to style it so it looks a little bit better, and then later on we're going to worry about using the API. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here into Bootstrap and see if there's any nice things that I can use. So for all the forecasts, I want to use this this list group because that gives me like these dividing lines. And then I'm going to use this one right here for I'm going to have a different color for the current one. Let's see. So that means that instead of a div element, I want to change it to a UL element. I'm going to leave the ID there. And then the class is going to be list group. And then these are going to be LI instead. And for forecast, I am also going to add the class list group item. Okay, so let's see how it looks. Okay, cool. Questions? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this this icon. I want to make it bigger, and then I'm just going to have the information here. Because if you can see, I want it to be nice on a phone. So if I make my so if that's kind of like a phone, that's kind of how I want it to look. Sorry, what was that? Okay, so let me move this image up here. And then I'm going to make it Well, let's see. We'll come back to that. Now, what I want is this icon. I want it right there, and then I want temperature pretty big, and then underneath it, the description, and then the date under the icon. Okay, so let's just try that. I'm really don't know how good this is going to look or not.
Okay, so we change that the forecast thing to a UL for an unordered place.
Yeah.
Would that be forecast as? You just repeated the same thing, right?
Yeah. Okay. So I think what I want to do is I want to put the day underneath the image, and then that's going to be inside a div. Class equals left. And then this is going to be another one, class equals right. Okay. And then I'm going to add some CSS here, style. So left. Now I'm selecting all the DOM elements that have the class left. And then this is display inline block. And the width is going to be, let's say, 200 pixels. And then right, display inline block with 100 pixels. I refresh, you can see that now it's the little icon with Sunday at the bottom, and the temperature is there, and the description. Okay. So I'm going to make the temperature bigger. Temp font size 1.2 EM. And I'm also going to make it bold. So font weight is bold. Let's go with 1.4 EM. Okay. Let's see. So that's 200 pixels. So that looks like it's a little bit too big, right? So let's make it 100 pixels instead. Actually, I think I can just take out the width. Let's see what happens with that. Yeah, I'm just going to take off the width for the left. And yeah, I'm also going to take off the width from the right. They just inline blocks. And then the left is going to have some padding on the right, because you can see that there's not enough space right there. So I'm just going to make that a little bit more. So padding right, 20 pixels. So maybe that might be too much. I think it looks fine. Okay. So that's the right, then that's the left. All right. So now I'm going to copy that for all of my other forecasts. I'm just going to take this and copy it 4 more times. One, two, three, four, five. Okay. And then this, I'm going to do something a little bit similar for the current. But I'm going to make that icon a little bit bigger. So for that one, the CSS, I want to select current and then the image inside current. So for that width, I'm going to make it 80 pixels.
You duplicate the LI element 4 times,
Yeah.
still within the UMAP.
Yep. Oh, it's actually pound current. Okay, so you see that it's bigger.
So, where did you just do it?
Oh, I just added I just added some CSS to make that image 80 pixels instead of 50 pixels, which is the default. Oh, no more power. Well, we're almost done. We only have 3 more minutes.
Hopefully it should be further.
So I'm going to do the same thing with it. Kind of, it's going to be similar. So let's see. But the description is going to be here at the bottom. So this one is class equals left. And this class equals right.
Okay, what was the width you made the image?
80. Yep.
And then you just put current.
Well, let me put here wind, and then here temp. Right, so that's that's kind of just styling the weather app. Let me commit the. What I'm going to do is I'm going to commit this to GitHub so that we can continue next time. And if you want to check, if you want to get the application up to date, you can take a look at the code. Okay, so it's there. Let's see, weather app code. Okay. So next time, guys, we're going to have another quiz on CSS selectors, and then we're going to continue our weather app. So any questions?
Ramiro, when is it that we have to choose what app to implement?
On Tuesday, I'm going to give you a list of possible apps that we suggest. You have to make your decision by Saturday.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Okay, so I'll see you on class on Tuesday then. Have a good day.
Tuesday